मसीह में मेरे भाई और बहनों, आपकी खिदमत में अदा पेश करता हूँ। आज हम खुदावंद के कलाम में से कुछ सीखेंगे, कुछ देखेंगे। इससे पहले कि हम खुदावंद के कलाम के पास आए, हम चंद बातें खुदावंद की सुनते हैं और देखते हैं कि खुदावंद किस तरह हमें इन बातों से सरफराज करता है।
The ox would pull a threshing sled over the top that would separate the grain from the chaff, and then the wind would blow the lighter chaff away, and that would leave the heavier grain behind. That's how you thresh grain. What's Gideon doing here? He's beating out a little bit of wheat with a stick in a wine press, which is just a hole in the ground. Now, why is he doing that? Because he says he's trying to save it from the Midianites. In other words, he knew they'd be looking for the threshing floors. He's trying to preserve this. So he's down in this hole, beating out a little bit of grain, probably looking over his shoulders to make sure nobody's watching him. The angel of the Lord appears, which in this case is the pre-incarnate Son of God. He's watching this. And as Gideon's beating out this grain in this wine press, God says to him, "The Lord is with you, O valiant warrior." What? The words valiant warrior mean mighty hero. This is a phrase reserved only for the greatest of military leaders. And Gideon's already ticked off that he has to sneak around just to get enough grain to make bread. He's in no mood for entertaining a comic. So when he hears this, he goes, "Excuse me." It's in the Hebrew. "Excuse me." Says, "Oh my Lord, if the Lord is with us, why then has all this happened to us? And where are all the miracles which the fathers told us about, saying, 'Did not the Lord bring us up from Egypt?' But now the Lord has abandoned us and given us into the hand of Midian." Gideon says, the Lord ain't with us. If the Lord is with us, he sure has a rotten way of showing us. If the Lord was with us, and we wouldn't have all these stinky Midianites raping our land every year, in case you haven't noticed. The Lord is with us, and we'd be seeing miracles like Moses did in Egypt, with locusts and blood and frogs. That's the kind of stuff God does that ain't happening around here. And here's what he's saying. God isn't with us. No, he abandoned us like an unwanted child in a ditch. Well, notice God's not deterred by that cynicism. He comes back to Gideon in verse 14 and says, "Go in your strength and deliver Israel from the hand of Midian. Have I not sent you?" He says, "Go." Gideon says, "You got the wrong guy." Verse 15, "Oh Lord, how shall I deliver Israel? Behold, my family is the least in Manasseh, and I'm the youngest in my father's house." He says, "You got the wrong guy. My family, they're a bunch of nobodies. I'm the runt of the family. Yeah. You want somebody better than me leading this. You got the wrong guy." But again, God says to him in verse 16, "Surely I will be with you, and you shall defeat Midian as one man." I will be with you. Gideon says, "All right, prove it." Verse 17, "If now I have found favor in thy sight, then show me a sign that it is thou who speakest with me." He's a pretty cynical guy, isn't he? He's cynical. He's skeptical. He's showing no interest in doing anything outside of just beating out enough grain to make a loaf of bread. God's showing him some real promises here. Twice God says, "I'm going to be with you." Once God says, "You're going to beat Midian like they're just one man." Those are pretty stout promises. But Gideon just keeps questioning. And he's actually questioning God's character. Now, how does God respond to that? Notice God doesn't reject him. God doesn't leave. He keeps reaching out and reaching out. In fact, he even shows Gideon the sign that he was requesting. And I think this gives us a second glimpse of our God in the story of Gideon. And that is when we get skeptical and cynical, God remains true to us. When we get skeptical and we start questioning God and questioning his character, God doesn't desert us. God doesn't turn his back on us. No, God remains true to us. Friends, that is so important for us to know. And not just important, it's encouraging to know that God always remains true to us.
खुदा उनका शुक्र है, अभी हमने यहाँ के मूडी रेडियो, मूडी बाइबल चर्च है शिकागो में, वहाँ पे पास्टर साहबान बोल रहे थे, तो हमने खुदावंद के कलाम में से चंद बातें यहाँ सीखी और देखी कि खुदावंद जो है अपनी अकल से, अपनी दानिश से और अपने रहम से काम करता है। वो इंसान तैयार नहीं होता, फिर भी खुदावंद की हजूरी और खुदावंद का पाक रूह से कंपेल करता है और ताकत हासिल करता है। इससे पहले कि खुदावंद हमारे साथ सख्ती से पेश आए या हमें मजबूर करे, तो हमारा फर्ज बनता है कि हम उसके फर्जंदों की तरह आराम से उसकी बादशाह में दाखिल होने के लिए अपने आप को तैयार करें। थैंक यू। अभी हम उर्दू का सेशन स्टार्ट करते हैं, तो उम्मीद है कि आप की मुलाकात हमारे साथ फिर से ज़रूर होगी। खुदा हाफिज़। जय मसीह की।